Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today we're on with Cody Jensen. Cody, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here. My name is Cody Jensen. I'm the founder of Searchbloom, which is a search marketing agency. We do SEO, Google Ads, conversion rate optimization, things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, so tell us about your journey to starting Searchbloom. What did you do before and how did you get there?
Yeah, interesting, maybe roundabout way of getting into digital marketing. I started working at Google and was doing Google Offers, which was their equivalent of Groupon back in the day. And I actually got to figure out what was going on in the back end. So I got access to companies' analytics and I was able to see what would happen when they would run a Google offer. And I got fascinated with analytics at that point. Unfortunately, that program kind of got shut down. Google offers as a whole just is gone, but it led me down this digital marketing path and I just became obsessed with it. I started working at some of the biggest SEO companies and digital marketing companies there are. Of course, in the business development side, that's where a majority of my career has been spent doing sales, at least early on. And what I learned is that what I was selling is actually not what was happening. And I couldn't put my name on it anymore. It made me feel yucky. Searchbloom was my answer. I knew that there was a better way. And yeah, this company might not make as much profit as this other digital marketing agency, but we do so with integrity. We do it with transparency. We do it the right way. No shortcuts here.
Yeah. Yeah, tell us more about Searchbloom and the value it brings to the market.
Yes, Searchbloom has been in business for over 10 years. I started it way back when I decided to break away. But basically, in a nutshell, Searchbloom helps companies not just get found online or on Google, but actually get leads or get purchases, generate revenue. That's really what we're all about is the bottom of the funnel and working upwards towards the top of the funnel. Inbound is search, right? And whether you're using Google, Perplexity, ChatGPT. It's search everywhere optimization nowadays. It's not just Google SEO.
Yeah. So now that LLMs are this burgeoning source of traffic, how are you optimizing for those new sources?
Here's the rub, the dirty little secret that nobody knows, nobody will say out loud that I've seen is that it's the same darn thing. You do SEO for Google, and for the most part, if you're doing it correctly and doing it in a white hat approach, building out a content resource center, building value in your website, you're going to be cited in LLMs, period. Even with Google losing a tiny bit of market share, it still owns the majority. We're looking at 70+%, right? And yeah, if you target Google, you're going to also rank on Bing and Bing's AI, which is of course ChatGPT. So they all kind of work together and they all learn from one another too. To me, it's focusing on where your audience is. And if your audience uses Google, they might use Perplexity or ChatGPT alongside of it. But when push comes to shove and they're ready to buy, usually they go to Google. That's your last click interaction.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you said you start at the bottom of the funnel, you work your way up. What does that process look like from analytics perspective?
Yeah, audience research, like who is our ICPs, right? And then from there, it's keyword research. And don't get me wrong, people might say keywords are dead too, just like they say SEO is dead. Nope, they're not dead, nor is SEO. But yes, you have to do keyword research and keyword mapping. Now with LLMs, you do a process called fan out, which is not just the head keyword, but now you're looking at 600 keywords that are tethered to that keyword. And you're developing content around all those 600 topics so that you are the subject matter expert in this particular keyword or segment or cluster of keywords, if that makes sense.
Oh, interesting. And how do you get to knowing those 600 keywords?
It's a great question. So keyword research will help you identify them doing keyword research, that is. There's a new tool that I'm going to shout out Michael King. He built this really new cool tool on his website that actually runs a synthetic version of Google's fan out process, which is it's a query fan out, but it's a part of the new Google AI mode. That's helpful, but you can also use also asked, you can use Ahrefs, you can use a lot of different tools out there to help you come up with and segment each of your clusters.
Oh, interesting. Okay, maybe we can link to that in the description. That would be cool to let the
Yeah,
viewers check it out.
Michael's tool, I think it's called Qforia, which is it's pretty rad.
Yeah, cool. What other sort of like SEO tools do you use to help clients?
I think the biggest SEO tool in the market right now is Ahrefs and SEMrush. Those are like the two big ones. I'm very biased towards Ahrefs. I prefer it. But if you get into paid search on the other side, SEMrush is significantly better than Ahrefs. So both of them have their pros and cons. They're the two gorillas in the industry. I love them and I hate them because I have to pay for them and they're expensive. But overall, you don't necessarily need them. They're just really nice to have. They make the job much, much more efficient. The most important tool is Google Search Console. That's first party information. You're getting that data. And you can layer on another tool that's really cheap, like SEO Gets, and that will give you more details on Google Search Console data. But I think it's that those are like the main ones that you want or need. Of course, there's many others that you're going to be wanting to look at, like Google Analytics and things like that. I like Microsoft Clarity, for example, to not just look at heat mapping, but click mapping and user funnels and things like that. You can actually watch recordings and things of that nature.
That's interesting. Yeah, I want to go back to something you mentioned, white hat SEO. What does black hat SEO look like?
Okay, I will tell you a story of the first SEO agency that I worked for. What they did, this is a perfect example of black hat. What they did is they hired a bunch of workers, say 200 workers, right? These are all college students. They're in a college city. These college students would show up for their shift every single day. They wouldn't have to log into a website. They would just write comments. They would just write comments and they would include a link in those comments to the client's website. The thing is, what they didn't know is that the company owned every single website that they were making comments on. So that's called a private blog network, and that is a big no-no. So this company owned, I think at one point, over 2,000 websites. They would either write articles or they would write comments, and they would link back to their clients, and it was like mimicking what real SEO is. And Google picks up on that really quick, and that company went downhill after the update Penguin. That's what Google called it, Penguin, and that killed them pretty hard.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's one example. There's so many.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like hacking, like the approach of there's this consistent back and forth between companies trying to basically close loopholes for how different processes work and people who have a financial incentive to get around them.
I would suggest that SEOs helped develop Google into what it is today simply by taking advantage of it, and Google now putting up new guardrails, new guardrails, new guardrails over and over again until, it's real. You can't, it's very hard to manipulate Google, right? But you can, if you just put out valuable content, then you're able to get traffic from Google, get conversions from Google.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, they're really incentivizing authentic online behavior from both companies and from people.
That's right. That's, I think, at the end of the day, what anybody would want. It took them a very long time to get there. And like I said, I think SEOs helped them evolve to that point.
Yeah. I'm curious about the future of LLMs and search optimization. Do you think and I heard that there's like rumblings about OpenAI possibly offering paid bidding or some kind of like a paid ads on ChatGPT. I'm curious, do you think that's where LLMs are going, especially for our free tiers?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It is the same thing for a tier of Hulu, right? You get ads. And I think it's in the company's best interest to do that. And Google already does that because it's in their best interest. But yeah, I would imagine that ChatGPT, Perplexity, and others, Grok, Claude, will incorporate ads. But that being said, it goes against ChatGPT's mission to do that, but they have peeled off another company that is for profit. It just, the founder or co-founder of that company sometimes is like back and forth to me. But either way, I think LLMs will continue to grow in mass in terms of usage. I think Google's new AI mode will be, oh gosh, it replaces to a great degree ChatGPT. It's just, I think, a lot better. And it has a lot more data. Like The way that ChatGPT was trained was from the internet or Google. Google has real-time information, and it has so much more information than ChatGPT ever could. I think it will be a whole nother game. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm a big
Yeah.
Google guy, though. Trust me, I have ChatGPT open right now, and I use it every single day. I love that it has a local product here, so I have it installed locally. But I think for consumers, the AI mode will be a thing that they use on a very regular basis to find local services, to find where they're going to dinner, whatever it might be, and all of that local SEO. It's not going to change much.
Yeah. That's good to know that there's not too many changes coming. How do you see this changing in 5 to 10 years? Do you think that eventually LLMs will be the primary way that people search and just like the traditional search will more or less go away?
I would say within 12 months' time, Google's default search will be AI mode. But I hope that they don't. I hope that and even if it is, I hope that they allow others to choose the tab that they want, right? So we're used to using the all tab, which is your 10 blue links, right? A lot of people are used to that. And then you have your AIOs in there and your ads and whatever. But some people like to look into the shopping side, and some people are looking for images. Some people are looking, whatever it might be, right? Google has so many features and advantages over its competitors. AI mode is simply just one more. So I think that it could become the default engine, but it would be radically expensive for Google to do that.
Yeah.
Using that much GPU at that level of scale, imagine the cost, even when they're caching these types of results, so they don't have to do it again and again. Still, it's going to be pretty wildly expensive.
Yeah. That makes sense. I didn't think about that, but yeah, there is definitely a cost element to transitioning to LLMs as the primary search.
Energy. Energy is the cost, and it's crazy the amount of energy that is required to power these LLMs. It's wild. That's why they're building all these humongous plants in the United States, because the United States is leading in the LLM charge. There's no doubt about it. But we will lack energy. That if we don't fix it now, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
lack energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about it. I think that the nuclear reactors make a lot of sense to close the gap. I feel
I
like
think that's the only thing that does,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's and it's an elegant solution
It is.
to the problem.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, cool. I'm curious going back to like your business and your clients. Do you have an example of where analytics led to like a major improvement in performance for a client?
Like analytics itself, it's to me, it's used as it's all historic data, right? Or this is past information. But when you take historic information and then you add layers of dimensions, you're able to peel out certain aspects of what is working and what is not working. And then it's very simple. It's usually the Pareto rule or the 80-20 rule, which is, hey, this 20% is producing 80% of the results. Let's double down on the 20%. And without analytics, it's difficult to do something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a fair point. Pretty much all of the optimizations you're making are in one way or another based on analytics. Is that right?
In a lot of cases, they're based on old datas, which is in analytics, no matter the tool, whether it's Google or Adobe or Ahrefs or whatever. This is data that's old inherently. However, there's a lot of like predictive analytic tools out there now, which are really cool, but it's not real. It's not real data.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, is your process gut checking a lot of the analytics that you see and making sure that you have more recent data to use?
A lot of it is a sanity check. Sometimes you're dealing with the seasonality, right? You might see, oh my gosh, traffic is way down. What's going on? If you didn't know that there is some cyclicality in the business, then you wouldn't have any idea. That's why with our partner clients, we go through thorough onboarding process. We actually vet them to make sure that we're going to be a good fit for them, and they're going to be a good fit for us as well. A lot of research, we do like content style guide questions where we actually interview them like you're interviewing me right now, and we record it just like you're recording this, where we can go through and get into the nitty gritty. What we found also that has been tremendously helpful is taking a website that an owner has written or a CMO, like they've bootstrapped this whole thing. So that we take all of their writing and what they've done on their website, and we can turn that using LLMs into tonality, into all these different nuances that now we can use to write for them.
Oh, interesting. And do you use AI in that process of writing on their behalf?
We don't use AI to create content itself, but we will use it to help us understand the tonality, help us understand different angles. We will help it. We'll also use LLMs to help produce outlines based on SERP with very specific prompts and things like that. It's not, hey, write this article. No, there's so much more that goes into it prior to that, which leans to very heavily into the audience analysis and research, keyword research and analysis, and so much more prompt from there. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I want to go even further back to your start in the early days of Searchbloom. What were some of the challenges that you faced starting your own agency?
It was me. It was just me, right? So I remember one of my first ever partner clients. It was a local rehab center, and I sold them a website. I can sell, right? So I sold them a website. Thing is, I hadn't built a website yet, like fully from A to Z. I've messed with it a lot, right? But I built a website for them, and then I did local SEO. I did it for free for them to learn it all, to go through the process of all of it. And yeah, I had worked at other agencies, but I wanted to do it the right way and not offshore everything or black hat this or whatever. I just wanted to do it the right way. And you know what? It worked so well that they recommended me to another company. And then I actually hired people to help me with all of this, and it was really fun. Like early days, think of founder in basement or working out of their house. That's what Searchbloom was.
That's really cool. So, yeah, so you started with like a pro bono project, and how did you sell the website?
They just straight up, they needed a website. They just as a kind of like a place where people could go because they did a lot of business development work that brought in clients. They'd go to places where they knew that they would go to their audience. They would target them directly in person. But they needed a website to be professional, number one, and first and foremost, so that these people could look them up. They could look up about the experience, the reviews, etc. So that's how I helped them. Is I showed them the need, and that's how I sold it. I didn't sell it for very much because I was upfront with them. Hey, I haven't made this before, but I'm very confident I can figure it out.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How did you approach your first few hires?
That was interesting. My first hire was Jordan, and now he's my business partner. But he's been with Searchbloom for over 10 years as well. So he was right in the beginning, like literally in the basement there with me. And he was cold calling at the time and trying to bring in new business. And when I say cold calling, I mean he's reaching out to folks that had already reached out to Searchbloom, but we had quite a list that I could never get to because we were taking our own medicine. I first built our website too, right? So I had to go through that process. After I figured out how to do it, now I know how to do it. Let's go ahead and build our own website. And it started ranking and doing very well. So now we had a lot of inbound leads, and Jordan, of course, would field those and then nurture the ones that maybe had gone cold or stale. And that's how we went. From there, it took off where we went from, I think our first year we did 300K. The second year was 680 or something. Then the next year was 1.7 or something. And that's when I'm like, holy crap, we need an office. We need more people. We got to keep fueling this engine. But yeah, it's been a pretty radical journey from start till, 10 and a half years in.
Wow, that is really cool. That's amazing growth.
Yeah, that was just the first 3 years. Now look at it, and it's so much bigger.
Wow. Yeah. What kind of resources did you use along the way to learn how to do this, or did you figure it out along the way?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that just figured out I learn. I'm the best resource by far, still probably the best resource, Google. Google was just awesome for me. I learned how to code, just basic HTML, CSS. I learned how to do WordPress installations. I learned how to use cPanel and PHP in my admin, and I learned how to connect a database to a WordPress front end. All these different things was taught to me by Google, by curiosity, by trying and failing multiple times. many hundreds of times, learning, okay, now I know. Now I know how to do it.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, a lot of perseverance along the way to figure things out.
I think you'll find perseverance is a key trait of any founder.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So as you look into the future, and I know that you're expanding into sort of LLM and search everywhere optimization. What other things do you see your business evolving to offer in the future?
I'm not sure if we're ever going to get too much deeper into other categories. We know what we do well. There's not necessarily a need to start calling it like, hey, let's do GEO and AEO. I think these companies that are popping up and renaming SEO to these new, what I will call gimmicks, I think it's irrelevant. I don't think that's a real service to be provided, simply based on how LLMs work, right? So it just doesn't make any sense. But overall, Searchbloom will continue to remain one of the best SEO companies in the world. I'm not saying that. The internet says it, right? We'll continue to provide the world-class PPC services. So we manage enterprise brands, Google ads and Bing ads, Amazon ads, etc. And of course, then we will continue to do conversion rate optimization. There's one getting traffic to a page or getting traffic to a site is just one step, right? We need them to convert, and that's where our CRO services come into play.
That's really interesting. So you mentioned PPC. I'm curious your perspective on Performance Max.
Performance Max is a necessary evil right now, and I think in a lot of ways it does what it says it's going to do. It can operate very efficiently. It can do exactly what you tell it to do. If this is your goal and this is what you want, and you push go with the system, it'll do it. The thing is, it becomes a bit of a black box in that you don't know what keywords it's bidding on. You don't know how much you're paying for those keywords. You don't have a way to cap what you're paying for those keywords. There's just a lot of restrictions, limitations, etc. But there are some controls that you can leverage. And then Google is now rolling out new beta programs so that you can see more details inside of Performance Max. Like the new beta we were invited to is channel reporting, which is phenomenal. So far, we're able to see where we're showing up within Performance Max. Is it all search? Is it YouTube? Is it Discover? Is it Gmail? Is it display? Is all this traffic coming from a garbage display network, right? No, in fact, actually, we're getting a lot from over here, over there. So it's been a cool experience to go through it with Google. I think that they launched it far too soon, and now they're trying to roll in some sort of reporting where we can actually see what's happening, but it can work very well. With that said, it can also just take an account. In overnight, you could just waste tens of thousands of dollars if you just don't do it.
That's interesting. Yeah. And how do you approach the balance since you do both SEO and PPC? How do you balance the cannibalization behind paying for traffic versus organic? And are you doing things like exact match? What's your approach to like choosing when to do broad match versus exact?
In a lot of cases, broad is going to be a cheaper click. And if we're talking Performance Max, then you don't have any of those options, right? It's just you're creating asset groups based on audiences and stuff. They have search themes where you can add keywords, but it doesn't. It's also in beta, at least as of now. But I think overall, if we're talking about a traditional search campaign, the way I would look at it is holistically. If I make a change on Google Ads, for example, I'm bidding on the keyword SEO agency, right? And it's a search campaign, traditional. I might have SEO agency as an exact match keyword. I might have it as a phrase match keyword. I probably would not have it in a branded or in a search campaign as a broad match standalone unless I was just starting the campaign out and I needed more data. But then over time, what I would learn is, okay, this search campaign is working. That's great. We're producing leads. What happens if I change the target CPA from 400 to 300? Does that mean I show up less, but do I lose any clicks because I'm already ranking for that, right? So I would take that a holistic approach, and it's traditionally called holdback testing, but you don't necessarily have to do a pull back 100%, pull back all of your ads. You can just test a little bit, right? Maybe you take a little budget away and see if you lose any clicks.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that's of course when you're already in a broad match scenario, and then it's maybe a little bit easier if you don't have any broad match keywords to fine tune that balance.
Yeah, I think in any given search campaign, you'll have a mixed bag of both. In the old days, we would actually group them separately. So you would have your broad match group, you'd have your phrase match group and exact match group. We don't typically do that anymore. We try to do theming more importantly than anything else, search theming and build our groups based on that. But just as much as SEO has changed over the last 2, 3 years, Google Ads has changed maybe more, probably more than even SEO.
I'm curious about branded versus unbranded and brand defense. What's your approach to how much a client should be spending on that?
That's tough because it costs me like 2 grand a month and it's just defense. It's because someone else is bidding on our brand name. And now Google, in a lot of cases, will allow you to use my trademark in someone else's ad, right? I think that's a little bit not okay on Google's side. I think they need to clap down again like they had in the past. But overall, I think that you should be doing brand defense if you need to. So if someone else is bidding on your brand name, then you might need to do it. I do it to protect make sure that we're front and center. People hear about us from all over the place, right? But they go to Google and then they search Searchbloom or Searchbloom reviews or whatever. And we need our ads to be there because other people are bidding on our brand name. But if you're in a situation where no one is bidding on your brand name, there is no reason for you to be running a branded campaign or a branded defense campaign, in my opinion. If you're ranking number one for your brand name, if you're not, then there's a very good reason.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Are there any tests that you ever run around it, like eliminating branded defense and seeing if there's any impact to traffic?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned before, holdback tests and experiments that we run a lot on the Google Ads side inform much of SEO as well. I think that number one, yeah, we run these tests all the time, but the heuristic or the overarching approach or holistic approach is looking at if I do this, my hypothesis is Y, but what's Z? What is reality? And it all starts and sprouts with that hypothesis. If this, then what? And you have to be able to and be willing to test. You have to have budget to test. If you don't have that, then you can't really improve because what gets measured gets managed, and that's how you change or evolve and get better. And if you can't do that, then you're stuck.
Yeah. I guess my final question, what are some of the most impactful tests that you've run for across SEO and PPC?
I'll tell you of a happy accident in terms of a test. One of our partners, we provide consulting services solely for them. One of our partners accidentally, I think, left an old credit card on file with Google, so all their ads shut off overnight. But we've had them ranking so well in SEO for so long, they didn't see a decrease in conversions for the 3 days that it was down. They saw a whole surge of organic traffic and the same level of conversions, maybe a modest decrease, but it was pretty eye-opening, eye-popping to this team that was like, holy smokes, we just soaked it all up in our own SEO. Do we really need to be spending this much money? So it then created a hypothesis. And so we tested out in the hypothesis to see the changes that we would make in paid. And it turns out we were overspending. We didn't actually have to spend as much as we were. So we made some tweaks, some changes, and took again a holistic approach and found like a good equilibrium between organic and paid.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting, and definitely I think a lot of the listeners can learn from those different tests that you outlined. And I just want to thank you, Cody, for walking us through Search Bloom and for sharing your story.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.